Let's call to order the Monday, June 28th, 2021 meeting of the Ellettsville Town Council. Marshall, would you like to do the pledge, or Chief, I'm sorry?
You did that. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chief, Marshall.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before you one more time. We just thank you so much for all the many blessings. We thank you for the wonderful employees that we have. We just thank you for everything you do for this town, and every individual you do, and every family represented here. Just be with us tonight, lead and guide our thoughts and conversation. Let the council have an open mind that they can make the right decisions for the whole town. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Say the roll call, please.
Scott Oldham.
Here.
Pamela Samples.
Here.
William Ellis.
Here.
And Dan Swafford.
Here.
Trevor Sager is absent.
Deviating a little bit from the normal, tonight we have the pleasure of the Police Officer of the Year. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. We started this up, I think, the spring of 2016. Police Officer of the Year to me means quite a bit because we have several Police Officers of the Year, just like Mike has many Firemen of the Year. It's just hard to choose when you come to that. This year, I always try to keep it quiet, but I think I pulled it off this year. I don't think this gentleman knows anything about it tonight. I first met the officer that we're honoring tonight. First met him back when I moved in from Connersville and did some DUI patrols. We met on the bypass there about midnight, and we've been friends ever since. And it's just been a good relationship. This officer has 13 years experience with us. He has been devoted to the citizens of Ellettsville. He's involved in our training continually each year. I'd like to have Mark Freeman come forward, if you would, sir. I thought somebody would slip and tell you wear a shirt and tie. Mark, I want to read this to you. It's the Ellettsville Police Department Deputy Marshal Mark Freeman. So ordered this day, we'll say June the 28th, 2021 by Ellettsville Town Council President Scott Oldham, Town Manager Mike Farmer, and Town Marshal Jimmy Durnall. This award is being presented for your outstanding work effort for 2020. Your 13 years of service is an excellent example of devotion to the citizens of Ellettsville. Also, your extensive involvement with special detailed assignments such as Fall Festival, 4th of July, Indiana University sporting events. Your exceptional commitment to the Department's defensive tactics training program has been duly noted by the administrative staff. Your professionalism and enthusiasm is second to none. Awarded this day, June the 28th, 2021, Police Officer of the Year for 2020. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
If I can add real quick, Mark, congratulations. Mark was one of my original training officers 33 years ago. It's been that long. 33, buddy.
And I am sorry for wearing jeans. I was misled on who is going to get this award tonight, but I do thank you all. I know I don't live inside the corporate limits, but since I've came here, I really have felt like I'm part of the Ellettsville family, and many times I've wished I've lived here rather than some of the stuff that we see going on in our bigger cities at times. But thank you for all your support you've given me over the years for my time of going part-time. You supported me when I went full-time, and the council also supported me, but I decided to go back part-time. So thank you very much, all of you.
Well, we will expect a report on what he was like as a rookie.
Very good officer.
Okay.
Just like Mark, he's the IT director for City of Bloomington now, so we're just, that's the type of quality of people we have on our department, so. You want to get one more picture of us?
Congratulations again to Officer Freeman. Move on now with approval of minutes for the regular meeting on June 14th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion second. Sandy, please.
Scott Oldham.
Yes.
Pamela Samples. Yes. William Ellis.
Yes.
Dan Swafford.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Action to pay accounts payable vouchers and the payroll.
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Sandy?
Scott Oldham.
Yes.
Pam Samples. Yes. William Ellis.
Yes.
Dan Swafford.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now we have the sale of the utility Vector truck. I think we've been here before.
Yes, we'd like approval to sell to, I'm sorry, Sandy, do you know who gave us the quote? We have a quote for $50,000, or not a quote, a bid for $50,000 to sell it. We've had it on eBay and we've tried all avenues to sell it, and I think it's time to let go of it and accept the bid.
This is the organization down in Louisville that bid, or down in Kentucky that bid on it the first time?
No, the people that bid on it first time, they took their bid back, and so this is a new, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it is, but they do work like it.
But they're not asking us like buy Amazon cards at Target or anything like that?
No, and it's not a Nigerian
Okay.
community.
So how did we arrive at this bid, I guess? And did we meet the state legal standard?
This is the one we tried to sell several times.
Right.
And so I think, you know, there's not much in the code that tells you what to do if you can't do it any other way, but I think if this is the only bid you've gotten, and we've been working on this for, what, 3 months now?
Yes.
I'd take it,
Okay.
and I think you're fine.
wanna
I
make
think
sure
you've
we're-
exercised your due diligence to try to get the highest bid.
Okay. Questions from the council?
Just curious, what was the first bid that we got?
51,000,
51? Okay.
I believe.
And I think that was the only one, right?
Yes, it was the only one.
And you'd set a reserve at 65? I think?
65, yeah. And that reserve came as a suggestion from the people that sold us the new Vector, and they sold us this original Vector. And I think what hurt us was that it's a 1997 model. They go through a lot of work. Everybody didn't know how well it's been maintained. So it was probably, 50,000 is probably a good bid. I think I said before that that's approximately a third of what we originally paid for it. We originally paid $167,000. We use it, we clean or recut at over 250,000 feet a year, and we've done that since we've had it. So 50,000, I'd be real happy with that.
Further questions from council? Is there a motion from council concerning this resolution? I'm sorry, concerning this sale?
I make a motion to approve the $50,000 bid for the sell of the utility Vector truck.
Second.
Motion second. Sandy?
Scott Oldham.
Yes.
Pam Samples.
Yes.
William Ellis.
Yes.
Dan Swafford.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and you'll handle all the paperwork, et cetera, correct? You'll handle all the paperwork, et cetera, correct? Okay.
Well, thank you, Mike, for getting this. I mean, honestly, it sounds like that was about market value, around 50, and we got it.
Moving on to resolutions. The resolution this evening is Resolution 15-2021, a transfer of funds for the promotion of town business.
That's to cover the $5,000 donation we made to the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Questions from council? Motions from council?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 15-2021, transfer of funds for promotion of town business.
Second.
Motion second. Sandy?
Scott Oldham.
Yes.
Pamela Samples.
Yes.
William Ellis.
Yes.
Dan Swafford.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Ordinance is on first reading tonight. The first ordinance is ordinance 2021-13. Pilot agreement with Ellettsville Senior Citizens Housing LLC, Richland Citizen Housing, and Maple Shades. Is this you, Kevin?
I have on Delgadillo on Zoom, and she is with Allied that has put together this pilot, and I can have her speak a little bit about what the agreement would be, if you'd like.
Sure.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Yvonne Delgadillo with Allied Affordable Housing. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to come before you again on Richland. So we've reached out to the town of Ellettsville once again, because if you recall, a few months ago, the town council did approve a tax abatement for the new construction that'll be coming in very shortly. And one of the things that the development team has been talking about and recently came up is through the state has passed an ordinance, and forgive me if the terminology is incorrect, but it's a regulation to be able to implement pilot programs for affordable housing projects, specifically like the Richland and Maple Shades. So one of the things that we'd like to do, basically what that would do is similar to what's been happening with all the Richland properties and Maple Shades since the beginning, is to preserve that tax exemption. In order for projects to qualify, it needs to make sure that it'll continue to be affordable housing for low-income families and seniors. But one of the things that we would like to do and that the board would like to do is so that all of the projects, like they are now, will continue to be under the same ordinance and exemption profile, is be under this pilot program that would include the existing properties as well as the new construction. So that's, and I know I've shared some of the material that we've been able to obtain from the state, as well as the bond counsel that we've been working with. He actually worked with the state on these ordinances so that projects are affordable housing projects throughout the state follow certain regulations. So it wouldn't change anything other than it would fall, all of the projects would fall under the same pilot agreement and be more consistent in terms of the reporting with the town. And for the new construction, it would be in perpetuity versus a 10-year that has to come back to the council after year 10.
Questions from council? Question for you, Kevin. In background and recitals, under the pilot agreement, we have paragraph A, where it gives a number of different apartment complexes and or addresses. As I recall, and I may be wrong in this, we gave a tax abatement for a construction of an apartment complex on the side of the old Lindsay Hayes.
Yes.
Now we're grouping in all the rest of these as well?
We did, we also did the tax abatement for well, I guess the council did tax abatement for the Richland senior housing expansion on Matthews Drive, which that one is included in, but Governor Park is not part of this agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is just Richland.
Okay.
So Governor Park will not be the one?
So that, the one over where Lindsay Hayes was is not part of this.
Okay. So when we're talking about families and senior citizens, is that now going to be a mix in this area? Because my understanding is it's just senior citizens in that area now. Am I incorrect there or no?
That is correct. It will continue to be seniors. Nothing is changing. It's just the tax abatement. Right now, the tax exemption for the existing was in perpetuity, and the way it read was that it needed to go under a nonprofit. As we're doing the tax credit transaction, it will now change. The nonprofits will still be the owners, but as an LLC, it needs to come through the town to get the approval, I believe, and I'll get that clarification, but nothing is changing on it'll continue to be seniors for all the Richmond phases, including the new construction, as well as Maple Shades.
Can we get something in writing stating that? Or do we have that already, Kevin?
It should be in place. We can certainly also provide the agreement that we have with IHCDA, because this one is just Richland, as Kevin mentioned. It's not. We're going forward.
Sorry, I just don't see it in this packet, so I wanted to make sure that we had a copy of that somewhere, that it was going to remain senior citizen housing.
Yeah, I think that should be fine.
Do we have a copy of it already?
No, but I think, I'll have Darla double check that. If not, I think it could be added easily, so that shouldn't be an issue.
It's some sort of definition as to what they're considering, because I know there's different
Sure.
complexes look at it a different way. Other questions from the council? Okay, this is an ordinance under first reading, which will come back to us presumably at our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, for further consideration, and we'll do the public hearing at that point. So if people have questions or concerns, I would suggest that you attend that meeting. Seeing nothing else, thank you, ma'am. We'll move on to ordinances on second reading tonight, which is ordinance 2021-12 to amend the zone maps, rezones property located at 415, 421 Constable Drive, Ellettsville, from R1 to R3.
All right. The petitioner is here, and he does have a little presentation to put together to show you, so I will let him explain the details. I will say the Citgo Plan Commission, where it received a favorable recommendation by 4-3 vote to rezone it from R1 to R3. And with that, I will attempt to get this up there.
Before we get to this presentation, can you tell us the difference between R1 to R3?
Oh, sorry. R1 is single-family residential. R3 is multifamily residential. Right. Good. Just tell me when to switch.
Okay, great. Actually, could you go back
To the start?
to the, one more slide back?
That's
Oh, sorry, second, slide 2. Here you go, great.
okay.
Wanted to first introduce myself to you all on the council. Good to see you. Thank you for having me this evening. And I've met some of you on Zoom, so in person it's a lot different. I teach at IU and I teach a public speaking class, business presentations. And so I always tell my students, embrace the nerves. And after semesters and semesters of presenting on Zoom, it's fun to be back in person. My wife and I moved down here in 2014, where we started our family, we started our business, and we became part of the greater community. And ever since the beginning, we started with real estate back in 2012 when we bought an abandoned HUD home that had been empty. It was covered in mold from the ceiling all the way to the floor. And we had $2,000 in the bank. And on a 3.5% FHA loan, we were able to buy that property with $1,200 all in. And that was a heck of a process. And that's where we really cut our teeth on investing in real estate, and we found out that we can offer value in this space, and that's the core of our business strategy. It's the core of our philosophy about real estate, is that it can offer value, and we've got about 9 years of experience in doing that. And then if you could, Kevin, just switch to the slide that was on the very first one. Sorry, the one that you just started on at the beginning of this. Go, I think it's like slide 5. One more over. There you go, great. And so I gave a longer presentation in the Plan Commission, and I'll honor your all time here, but what we have is a property that had extensive fire damage before we bought it. I think the person before us bought it for a very good price. They put an incredible amount of work in it, and it really aligned with our philosophy of offering value. Since we've owned that property, before we owned the property, it was turned into a duplex and a single family. I think the fire damage beforehand burnt down the breezeway that created a mother-in-law suite. And so one thing that's unique about this property is that it will never qualify for personal financing. It will always have to be under a commercial loan because you have two separate parcels on one address. And so whoever is buying this in the future, whenever we let go of it in the, 100 years from now, because I intend to live forever, and it will have to be also an investment property. And so what this request does is it brings the property into alignment with its current condition, which is one of the factors for approval. This request also complies with the comprehensive plan, which asks for more housing options, a greater housing diversity in this town. We know that a lot of people want to live in single family houses with a yard, and also not a lot of people can afford that, especially as our housing prices continue to increase. If we can offer more inventory, then hopefully, little by little, we can help to stabilize some of those prices. And I think that brings me to point number 3, is that it does allow the most desirable use of the property. Currently, there's a small lot there that is off to the side of the southern part of the property, and it just gets mowed every week. And one thing that I do believe in is emissions standards, and I believe in trying to be as close to the earth as possible. And it breaks my heart that mower engines are not regulated by the EPA. And so we actually don't know how many toxic fumes are being emitted every time we mow. Oh, that's something that I do think about quite often. And I'd really love to see us be able to add additional housing there instead of it just being grass. By the way, turf breeds a lot of invasive insects that otherwise would not be there. Another thing with the comprehensive plan is we have to wonder, will it impact the surrounding property values? And since this area has been surrounded by multifamily, we were talking about the senior housing earlier, they're our neighbor. Constable Drive is a multifamily neighborhood. To the north of us is R3 undeveloped. To the west of us is R3, the senior housing. To the south of us is R1, but there's a lot of duplexes that are there with the Richland senior housing. And all of that brings me to believe that this does promote responsible development of that lot, and that does agree with the staff findings. So thank you for your consideration as we think about this. I have a lot of other content that we can share if you have questions, but otherwise I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Do you have a picture of what the lot currently looks like?
I do, thank you. If you scroll, there you are. So this is one of the slides that also shows where some of the parking would be. Currently, what the former owner did not consider is that people have cars, and people have multiple cars, and they like to park their cars next to where they live. And currently, there are an okay number of spaces to park, but if we are able to turn this into R3, this will help bring more parking availability to the residents here. And so the driveway on the farthest north, up is north, that would go to 421. Then the 2 spaces that are right there, currently those spaces are shared with the basement and the upper unit. And then we would be able to, in our mind, add extra parking all along the road frontage there. It's also worth noting that this lot, it's small. The whole parcel is half an acre, and there's basically our intention is to square it off right there, and that's where we would have the building envelope. It meets all of the code requirements for best building practices, setbacks, parking spaces, that kind of thing.
So how many apartments are we talking?
Well, if you go back that one slide up, there you go. There's a building envelope of 2,700 square feet, and as the plan commission mentioned, it's tight. It's tight in there if you add too much density. I think at a maximum, it would be appropriate to put a duplex there. That would be a really nice sized duplex, 1,300 square feet each side, and would be single story, and that we would be able to offer some units that would be within the 30% income to rent ratio that would be, because the median city income is $52,000, and I think we would be well within that.
So we're talking about one duplex.
Correct.
Other questions from council? Questions from the public? Comments from the public?
I have another question for the petitioner. Have you talked to the neighbors about this?
I have, and the neighbor to the south of us, we have a pretty good relationship with each other, and of course, you know, so the feedback is nobody wants to live next to rentals, and I understand that. We are fortunate that we own our house. We were able to take advantage of low down payment options. We found an undervalued property that we were able to fix up, and there are renters in our neighborhood as well. Some folks say, gosh, we don't want to live next to multifamily. I also understand that. However, the lot to the north there on Grant that just is around the curve, I don't know who owns that. I know the name of the owner. I've never interacted with them, but I suspect at some point they'll build multifamily there because that's what it's currently zoned for. The neighbors that share a fence line with us on the west, they said, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, they have a contractor, I was just speaking to them, they have a contractor who really did not honor their business relationship with the owners there and never finished a fence. And the fence is just a big debacle. And they said, hey, do you think that if you did build something, you'd put up a privacy fence? And I said, yeah, that seems like it would make a lot of sense for our residents and for you. So we would also be able to help our neighbors there to the west.
Okay. Further questions from council?
Kevin, in our R3 zone, besides duplexes, what else is R3? Is it apartments too, or?
Yeah, R3 allows single family, two family, and multifamily, which is anything 3 or more.
And is there any R3 or close to this?
Yeah, it's surrounded by R3 to the north and east.
Okay. Do you have that map you can put up there?
Yeah, you can see this, a lot of this is the Richland senior housing on the east side. This is undeveloped right here to the north.
And
then we're
purple
up
is
here
us
somewhere.
right now, yeah.
So everything to the west of that is R1 though, right?
Yeah.
And yellow's R1.
Again, this lot will never qualify for residential financing.
Well, it could if the lots were merged, if you combine the parcels.
Well, it's a single parcel already, and that's why it will be challenging to subdivide that lot, because if you could go to that last slide that had the parking on it. Sorry, slide 7. One more down. There you go. Yeah. So it will be challenging to divide the lot because both units are connected.
And that is something we talked about previously, about splitting lots, and even if they were to split that bottom half of the lot, it would not meet minimum lot size. If you split anything above that, you're not gonna have setbacks. It's gonna be.
Splitting, I'm talking about combining it. You can combine parcels.
It is already one parcel.
Okay.
Those are all on one parcel.
So
We can't-
why wouldn't you be able to get financing on it then?
Because there are 2 residences that are separate buildings.
Oh.
So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are happy to loan if you are an owner occupant of a duplex, triplex, or a quad, assuming it's all under the same roof, is my understanding.
So I guess my question is this, that you're envisioning one duplex.
Yeah, yeah.
Why are there 12 parking spaces for one duplex?
To meet the requirements. So, I mean, so the southmost spot where there's 8 spaces, that could be 6 spaces. What I'm trying to show here is that the plan offers additional parking opportunities, and I know that a lot of times we're really curious if there's enough parking.
Our code requires 4.
For single family, for R1, 4 spaces
Per
per
unit.
residence.
Yeah.
And
Even for a duplex.
right. And in commercial R3, I think it's 2 spaces per unit.
Yeah.
So Kevin, assuming we approve this change tonight, and taking this gentleman off the hook when he sells this 100 years from now.
Sure.
What's to prevent someone at a later date coming in and demolishing that duplex and deciding to erect an apartment complex there?
Well, they would be limited by the density. It's kind of a backwards equation, but they'd be capped out at 8 units max on a half-acre lot. They couldn't go above that. And with the duplex on there, that'd put them at 5 units total for that lot. I mean, someone could, I suppose, do that. I don't know that that would ever be financially
That's what I was
worth it.
gonna say. As an investor, I don't, of the other investors that I know, it wouldn't seem financially viable to tear down a perfectly existing structure unless you were able to do some ultra density there, like 25 units or something like that, which I think we can all agree is absolutely unreasonable.
So R2 would not work for this lot?
No, because you'd have to split the lots to do that.
I have another question too. I know when you came to the planning commission, there was a very concerned neighbor there that was on the
Yes.
Zoom meeting with
Darla.
us. Yes. Did
Yes.
you contact her?
Yes,
And-
I tried and I never found her at home when I was there. And our property manager also has reached out to her as well. And our property manager's sign was in the yard while we had a vacancy, and we never heard any calls from her. And she does have a relationship, I know, with our one neighbor on the southern corner there. And her primary concern is that, from what I hear, is she says that, if this is a rental, then people are just more transient and maybe they're just doing whatever they want on the property. And during the call, one of our tenants was actually working on a vehicle that they owned, and she was really upset about that. And it's also was within reasonable hours to be doing that on your own property if you were a property owner as well. Those tenants, though, have since moved out, and we have some new folks that are in there now.
I can't say we have not had any complaints on any of the properties since you have owned those.
Kevin, what would be to prevent, because I'm unfamiliar with how you kind of go back to this, if in fact there was a breezeway connecting the 2 structures at one point and that can be proved, what's to prevent you from reconstructing that breezeway if it was destroyed by fire to making this into one single residence again?
I mean, that could be done. I don't know how much you'd have to build to make that one single residence again. I don't know how feasible it is damage-wise, or
Right, but there's no legal precedent standing in the way to.
No.
None of our code or anything like that
No.
prohibits restoring that to its original.
And also,
No.
I don't know that with certainty. I just assume from the one photo on the
No,
GIS that shows it looked like there was some fire damage here.
Okay.
So those are my assumptions.
Okay. Further questions from the council? Is there action from the council? Kevin, or Darla, one of you, the council does not take action and this dies without motion, it reverts to the plan commission ruling, does it not?
Yes, I believe it does.
If the town council decides to take no action within a certain period of time, 90 days, and the council does not adopt or reject the proposal, then it will be as if it's passed by the council, in other words, if that makes any sense.
Okay. So once again, call to the council, is there a motion?
Can I say that better? If the legislative body fails to act on the proposal within 90 days, the ordinance will take effect as if it had been adopted by the council.
Okay, then I move, my motion is actually going to be to reject. Can I do that? Can that be to reject ordinance 2021-12?
Darla, do you have a problem with that motion?
No, that's one of your choices. You can adopt it or reject it. Or, well, okay, you can adopt, reject, or do nothing.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion a second. Sandy, please.
Scott Oldham?
No.
Pamela Samples?
No.
William Ellis?
I want to make clear, no vote means we vote to approve and not reject it, correct?
Yes.
I apologize then, because I had that backwards.
Because the motion is to reject the ordinance.
Right.
Then my vote is yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
I apologize.
Pam?
I'm going to reject it.
So that's a yes. William Ellis?
Yes.
Dan Swafford?
No.
Motion carries. Now, Darla, will that, since they rejected it, does it still fall under the 90 days and it'll still pass?
No, once it's rejected, it's defeated.
But he can return to Plan Commission with a different plan, can he not?
It's R1, you can't really put anything else on that lot.
Right, as a practical matter, no.
Okay.
So,
Just want to make sure that we give him the adequate instructions that he needs before we leave here. So it remains as R1 at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the primary concern with the council the density in that area, or the potential that at some point in the future it could become an apartment complex?
From my perspective, that's one of the issues, yes. The narrowness of Constable is another issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's my biggest
it is
one.
a very narrow street.
Sure.
I think if we were dealing with one of standard width, I would feel differently about it.
It is quite narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, that's not on you, that's just how the road is constructed.
Yeah.
I apologize for that, but that's clearly something that goes through my mind, particularly when we're going to generate 2 duplexes coming and going traffic.
Sure.
And being completely honest, being right next to the senior housing complex with that narrow street kind of
that's
worries
fair.
me, some sight lines and everything else, that safety concerns, at least for me. I can't speak to the rest of the
Sure,
council.
sure. That makes sense. That's good feedback for me, thank you. I'm obviously very early in this space, so I am grateful for that insight.
As someone that's flipped homes too, I understand completely what you're.
Perfect, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, thank you. Okay, all right, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry for that. I was totally
That's right.
misconstruing how we were going with that. Under old business, tonight is the Water Emergency Contingency Plan, Emergency Operation Disaster Planning in the event of a groundwater/water contamination.
Well, this is our water emergency contingency plan as operator for the town of Ellettsville's utilities. I brought it to you as an example of some of the things that we have to do to satisfy IDAM and IURC as we go about our business. So I don't think I need it approved. I would take your approval, but it was a exercise in education.
I just didn't know where you needed to go with this, so.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll say it seems very well thought out. I mean, as far as what we're doing, if this occurs, we do X, Y, et cetera.
right, and it falls within the local emergency management protocols as well. And I mean, a lot of times when we go about our business, people get water, they use water, they flush water away, and take for granted the oversight we have and how we go about our business. Every day, for example, we take chlorine samples in our town. Every week, we take back T samples. Every 3 months, we take disinfectant byproduct samples. We have to do inventories for both IDAM and IURC, and there's just a plethora of things that we are asked to do and record and send into agency that basically tells us what to do. And so, anyway, like I said, it was just an exercise in education.
Well, I would like to comment too that, in more to the public, because you already know this, several years ago, we were faced with a fairly significant drought situation, and we had some issues, and the question got asked, what do we do if? And Mike was very quick to say, these are our options, A, B, C. And when we brought the secondary water line into Bloomington, I think that really helped alleviate a lot of our concerns. In the fact that I asked what happens, we'd had a minor earthquake early in the day, and I asked Mike, what happens if? And he said, well, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna shut off the water tanks and you're gonna post a guard because you get about 30 minutes before we're out of water. So having that secondary line is absolutely outstanding because, again, you would have to preserve a certain amount of water in the tanks for firefighting efforts based upon some type of natural disaster. So kudos to you guys to making sure that there's more than enough water coming in to meet any demand.
Yeah, and I would add the secondary water line has come into play already. We're up above 1 million gallons a day. We had a 1.2 million, which used to be our maximum output from our 112-inch line. And once you go past 1.2 million, then your tanks start becoming the reservoir. And in 2012, we couldn't even keep our reservoirs full for weeks, if not months. And so we've kind of grown since 2012, we've kind of grown into a new daily use of water. And so the secondary water line was well timed. And it's funny how sometimes problems turn into opportunities. And so all's well.
Well, that also sets the stage for a conversation that we'll have later tonight concerning being able to provide water for a bigger town. So it all kind of plays into areas. Any questions from the council on this? Questions from the public on this one? Seeing none, we'll move on to open door law update. Ms. Brown.
I had asked Sandy to put this on the agenda because, as you are aware, the Indiana legislature has passed a couple of new code sections which would allow the town council, if it chose, to adopt a policy that would allow the members of the town council to participate in meetings electronically. And we had talked about it briefly, probably 3 meetings ago. And I asked Sandy to put it back on the agenda so that I could get a feel from the council as to what direction you wanted to go. And I want to reiterate that you do not have to do anything. And I know some boards don't want to have the hybrid, but just as a refresher, if the town council decides to do this, they have to adopt a policy that would allow all members of the governing body to communicate with each other and also allow the public to simultaneously attend and observe the meeting. And we're talking regular town council meetings, not executive session, obviously. There still has to be a quorum present in person in the meeting room, and the town council members who are participating electronically have to use some sort of device where they can be seen and heard. So that means probably your cell phone may not work. You can't just have your name up there. You can't put a picture of your dog up there. You have to be seen when you're voting. So that's one rule. You can limit the number of members who participate electronically. You cannot use the electronic meeting format for taking final action on certain issues. Those include adopting a budget, making a reduction in personnel, initiating a referendum, establishing or increasing a fee, establishing or increasing a penalty, or to use your eminent domain authority, or to establish, raise, or renew a tax. So we talked about this at the Municipal Lawyers Conference last week, and some of the speakers said that their entities found this cumbersome and they were not going to adopt a hybrid policy. But I wanted to put it back out there for you to consider. And I think the last time we talked about this, Scott asked me a question, which was, does the town council establish the policy for the whole town, or do the separate boards have their own policy? And I think I hesitated, and I said, I think the separate boards have their own policy, and I've had a chance to look at the definitions, and I think that's true. A public agency is defined as a board, commission, department, agency, authority, or other entity exercising a portion of the executive, administrative, or legislative power of the state. So that's the Plan Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. any county, township, school corporation, city, town, or political subdivision exercising the executive, administrative, or legislative power of the state. So that's the Parks Board. By statute, the Parks Board is considered a political subdivision, and then the statute also says that a public agency also includes a building corporation. So all of those entities could come up with their own policy if they wanted to, although I think if the town council wanted to come up with a policy for hybrid meetings, it could, and it could encourage these other entities to adopt that policy, which I think is what the city of Bloomington is trying to do. So anyway, that's, I just wanted to have Sandy put that back on the agenda so I could get some town council member thoughts as to whether you want me to come up with a policy for your consideration.
Well, personally, speaking first, I'd like to see the hybrid policy go into effect, because I think Zoom is particularly advantageous to us on a variety of different levels. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I think it's been incredibly beneficial for some folks who couldn't otherwise get here. And I think it also, for those folks who just want to listen in, it makes it a little more convenient sometimes.
But we can still do Zoom without having, like we are currently.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and I don't see anything in the statute that would prohibit that, and I think having people participate by Zoom is no different than having them send letters or emails before a meeting, in all honesty. So, and nobody at the conference last week said you can't do that.
So this would just be restricted council member access.
Right. The
Okay.
statute applies to you folks, but I think you can still allow people to participate by Zoom. The only time I think we need to be really careful, although I think we're careful anyway, is when you're having your public hearing portions, like when the town council has a public hearing requirement, and of course, all the BZA and Plan Commission meetings are public hearings. We just need to be careful and help each other out when, especially at Plan Commission meetings, I've noticed on Zoom or on BZA meetings, you have a bunch of people who want to gather in somebody's dining room or kitchen, and they all want to talk at once. We just need to be careful about separating people out, making sure that each person identifies him or herself for the record, and we're sure we're getting that person's opinion or thoughts and not, somebody's whispering at them from the corner of the room. That's real important for public hearing requirements. So, but I mean, I think we can manage that. We just need to be extra careful, so.
Other comments from council?
Question two, I know I'm on a couple of Bloomington boards and Monroe County, and they're doing the hybrid thing, but you can only do 2 meetings a year. Is that just their policy, or is that you can only attend?
2, then you have to come back.
Right, you have to, in a 12-month period, you can only miss 2 actual meetings. You can only do 2 virtual meetings.
I thought that's, I read at one point in time.
2 in a row, I think. Is that not right?
Well, yes, you can do 2, you can miss or attend electronically 2 meetings in a row, so 2 consecutive meetings. Subsection H says a member of the governing body may not attend more than 50% of the governing body's meetings in a calendar year. So they adopted a policy that under the statute would allow them to, in other words, they're not in compliance with the statute. So,
Is the provision in there, or was it one of the drafts I read from Associated Citizen Towns or somebody else, that there was a provision for, like, a council member who would be ill or deployed? Military could then attend more than that, correct?
right. If it's an emergency, or if you've got a military deployment or an illness or something like that, death of a relative, an emergency involving actual or threatened injury to persons or property, there's an exception for those things. But I think you have to make a record at some point as to what your emergency was and why you didn't attend. And they also encourage you to adopt a policy that would require the town council members to tell the president if they're not going to be here, so the president can make sure that there's always a quorum in the room. So I didn't answer your question very well, Dan, but if you're attending.
Well, I think you did. I mean.
Yeah.
The 2 meetings in a row, I do remember that. The 12-month period could just be a policy that they put in place too.
I think the entities can ask you or make a requirement that you attend a certain number of meetings, but they cannot come up with a policy that allows you to miss more than half. So they could do a policy that allows you to miss less than half, but not more than half under the statute.
Maybe that's something to do with it.
And wouldn't that also change between elected officials and appointed?
Pardon
That
me?
would also be different between elected, I think, and appointed. Because appointed, I think there's sometimes mechanisms to remove a little bit more than elected. Like if they don't comply. I know that even before Zoom, if you had missed 3 meetings on some boards, that was considered a resignation.
Right.
Where I don't know if that could be, I don't think an elected official, that would be
Yeah,
the same.
I don't think that's going to apply to town council.
Well, I think it's a great idea to do a hybrid. I don't think we'll use it that often, but it's nice to have for emergencies. I mean,
That would be my suggestion. I mean, just as a
Yeah.
practical matter, if you want to do this, let's have the policy in place in case there's an emergency, but otherwise, forget about it and just try to be here in person. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I tend to agree with Dan. I mean, again, we were just kind of talking on the side here that, you know, if something were to happen that one of us was
Right.
sick or ill or injured, then we don't have to create a policy at the time. If we just set it now
Right.
and just leave it dormant,
Right.
then it is what it is.
It's there if you need it.
Right. Comments from the public on this? Step up if you would, please. Sorry, those in the room have to come to the microphone.
Seems to make a lot of sense to have a hybrid policy. I'd just like to voice my support for that.
Thank you.
Did you write your name on my list there when you spoke?
Oh, no, I didn't see that there was a. Do you want me to write it twice?
No, once, I just want to make sure I get it spelled correctly in the minutes.
Other comments from the public? Okay. Go ahead, Russ.
I want to thank the council for proceeding in permitting the Zoom attendance of meetings to proceed. And I think you've got a good point there that some policy ought to be set up for digital attendance by members of council in extreme situations, even though you don't intend to use it on a regular basis.
Thank you, Russ. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Back to the council for action or just directive, Darla? How do you want to
I don't think you need to do a specific vote, but if you want me to put something together, I'll have it ready for the next meeting.
I think that's the consensus of council, is it not?
Is mine? Yep.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, please. Move on now to, is there a flood report?
This one, with all the rain, did we flood?
We did for a little bit, but
But, I like.
Well, I think there's some people from Vine Street here as well. As everybody knows, we had a storm on, I guess it was Friday night, it was into Saturday morning. And we dispatched crews out around midnight, and I'm not sure of the time frame. I remember at 12:15 saying, I'll be there in a minute. And so we had crews that had to block off 46 because you could not get through 46. Some of the side streets were flooded as well, and at one point you couldn't get through town. So we sandbagged the old town hall, and afterwards we did, on Saturday, we did some cleanup of Vine Street and the surrounding area. I had some people on Vine Street that said, well, we didn't flood this time, we stayed dry, so it wasn't as bad as 2018 when everybody flooded, but I do believe there was water in some of the houses on Vine Street. And so the water goes down as fast as it comes up, and it's not going to quit flooding until we do something about it. So I'm glad we're trying to make some progress on that.
just real quick comment, because I know there's a couple people over the last couple years that we've been buying up property and making plans that have said something to me occasionally that's very critical about why would we do this, the state did it, on and on and on. Mike and I had a conversation about 1:30 on Saturday morning about could an ambulance from Owen County, Steinsville, west of us, have access to hospital? And the answer then was no. Within about 10 minutes, the answer was yes. So while I get the fact that the bill comes to the town of Ellettsville to do this, it's for the greater community good to make sure that we're buying up properties and shelving off properties, because it's not convenience we're talking about here, folks. It's life and death for some folks. And you never know who that's going to be. And you never know when that's going to happen. So I get the state may be behind some of our issues, and not that I don't care, but just flat out, I don't care. It's somebody's life in the long run. So I think, at least for my part of this council, we will continue to do everything we can to make sure that that water leaves 46 and leaves Vine Street as fast as possible, and do everything we can to alleviate that. But I just want people to think beyond themselves for just a few minutes. The people who complain about all the money spent and complain about all the time and all the arguing, and it's, in the long term, it's irrelevant if it's you in the back of the ambulance. So again, my 2 cents.
I will add that Christopher Burke, a representative, oh my goodness, I can't even think of his name right now. Anyway, they came down, and after going over the properties that we're going to shelve, which really are not shelves now, it's a gradual slope, he recommended that we contact the property owners all the way to Sales Street and incorporate their yards as well. We have a large sewer line that goes through there, so it won't be as great a project, but so we're going to start canvassing everyone from 2nd Street to Sales Street, and try to get easements from them and incorporate them into the plan. And secondarily, he recommends on the heels of what we do on Vine Street that we start looking ahead towards McNeely Street, which was part of the water model, and it was phase 2, and tried to get an additional culvert box installed at the north side of the bridge on McNeely Street. So we're looking forward to having the plan in hand. It'll probably be another 3 or 4 months.
I mean, I know things never go as planned, but let's say that we get the plan, we can execute the plan without any hiccups. How much longer are we talking about from start to finish, you think, to get this? How long will this plan take to execute?
Well, up to today, I would have said we could start on it immediately, and it might take 8 to 12 months. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a longer process, because I think we're going to get trial and error too. I mean, do you know how much rain we actually got? It was
Almost 2 inches in 15 minutes to begin with.
I mean, there's going to be some incidents
I got like 5.5 inches.
we can't control. I mean, just look at 69, they flooded, Bloomington flooded. I mean, there's going to be events that I don't think we're going to alleviate all the flooding, but I think we can do this and stop a lot of it. And
Absolutely.
I think, you know, I don't think there's going to be a timeline, is what I'm trying to say, because after we complete this phase of it, we may have to do something else, because, you know, just to help out, because the next flood, or the next flood,
My
so.
question was just on the phase that we
Oh, the
started
one
on.
we're working
Yes,
on.
the one we're working.
Yeah, I'm not talking about once we do this work that we won't have to worry about flooding anymore. We'll still have to worry about it, but in some instances, like the last couple weeks flood, perhaps it would not have flooded at all. I mean, because of the amount of flooding that happened, it was probably, I don't know, a foot of flooding, and so I think that's what one of the models shows that it would mitigate. So, yeah, it's not going to solve all the problems, and, you know, I always wonder when they're talking about 100-year floods or 100-year rains, this, that, and the other, and I told the Christopher Burke representative, I said, we seem to have them about every 3 or 4 months, or, you know, I mean, the 100-year floods are like at least quarterly, and a 500-year flood, you know, it's probably around the corner.
What you didn't know is those were dog years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what the 2008 flood, which I think was the high water mark, but I don't know if that was a 500-year flood or not. I can't
And I think
remember.
a lot of that too was the consistency. It lasted longer than this one, this last
Absolutely,
one. I
absolutely.
mean, if this last one, if we would have had that last a few days, we'd all been flooded.
I mean, the large flood we had before I came to work here was 95, and that was 11 inches, and it was pretty quick to 11. So there's nothing you can do unless you're NOAA to alleviate that.
Well, I mean, a couple points that, to your point, how fast for this phase? I think we're in what, year 6 of this plan? I mean, from when we started acquiring the Stewart property, you know, because we'll need that at some point for a variety of different uses. Start acquiring bits and pieces of the trail property, which helped us out, acquiring bits and pieces of other property, which has helped us out. And again, just to kind of brag on my cohorts up here, these are the first councils over the last 6-8 years who have done anything for this in 50+ years. That finally, the people up here decided enough. And quite frankly, it's proving itself a little bit at a time. And that doesn't make it better for the people on Vine. I get that completely, but we're trying, we're getting there. I don't think you build anything to take in that amount of rain in 15 minutes. That don't fly for anybody. So we'll get there. It's going to be a bit. It's going to be a while, but at least we're moving forward on a plan to alleviate everything that we can foresee coming at us. So again,
I would say that nobody's seen this one coming. I don't think the weather predicted it, and so we were taken by surprise.
well, again, kudos to Mike and his crews because they have been at the forefront of this for years and years, and the street department for years. So again, thank you all for all the work you've done. Fire department.
I do have a question.
The whole
Yeah, all the departments were in on it.
I have a question for you. Are the 2 properties that we got, the 104 and 105, are you going to start doing something to them?
Only after we have a plan, and that's where we'll start immediately.
What was the question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
The Vine Street property.
Ask him if he's going to start on the 104 and 105. Go ahead and start something there.
Oh, okay.
Those properties, including Chandler's, who has agreed to give us an easement to do remediation on it, which makes it a third larger where we're going to work. And then I'm trying to work with the people that own the Village Inn there's a small portion across the street, and we'd like to incorporate it as well. I'm having a hard time getting a hold of anybody. So all those properties, and then if you additionally add to the backyards, and it would just be the back third of their yards, because we have to stop at some point to protect our interceptor sewer lines that go down through there. But with those as well, I think it will make a difference. I mean, that's what the flood study, the water model says will happen. And I can only trust the engineers. But it makes common sense that if you make the creek wider and gives the initial flooding somewhere to go, that it gives you more time and allows you some more room for more rain. So, you know, the creek's pretty narrow, really. Mm-hmm. And we have a couple bridges that hold back the water as well. I mean, the creek actually, for me, starts at the sewer plant. There's a bridge there, and you can follow the water back to Maple Grove, and there's a bridge there. And so when we're watching the bridge right at 46 and Sale, we also have been to the sewer plant. And then once it gets up to a certain point, we go to the Maple Grove bridge. And then when it gets to a certain point, then we know, because once it gets to a certain point, all of a sudden it just floods. And so we know when that's going to happen. And we even have markers on the bridge at Sale Street with reflectors on them so we can see them in the dark. And when it hits that third reflector, it's time. So, I mean, we only probably have 15, depending on the rain, but we only have sometimes 15, 20 minutes to prepare, so. And that's when it goes over the road, and we close the roads for protecting people going through it, because they'll try to go through it if you don't block the road.
Yeah.
Further questions from council or comments? Questions from the public or comments from the public?
Hello, Carl Thurman, owner of Thurman Body Shop and resident of Vine Street. I guess my question is, there's been a lot of money spent on studies and plans made and properties purchased. When's action come along? When does the digging start? When does this all take place? I'm very patient and I'm very vested in Ellettsville, and I want to see good things happen. And I've heard a lot of good plans, and I was hoping it would all happen before the next flood.
Right. Well,
But it didn't happen.
if I can answer just real quick, and I don't mean to cut you off.
Sure.
We have to have the studies, and we have to have the plans before we can get the permit from IDEM and DOT and various other places to even begin to dig, because we're digging in a waterway. So all those things had to come first, and I know it kind of seems backwards, but to even get to the permit stage, am I correct here?
That's where we're at now. so.
That's what we all had to have in place. The properties were acquired, quite frankly, a little out of sequence, but on the flip side, they were available then, so that's when we had to take them before they got, for the better part of us, into other hands, which would have cost us more money to obtain them, because we already knew what the plan said. Right now, we couldn't dig if we wanted to because we don't have the permit. And until you get the permit from DNR and IDEM,
And the permit, how long do they take for the permits to be approved?
that's a good question. It all
It'd be
depends.
2 to 3 months. Some people, individuals, wait 6 months for a permit.
A lot of it depends on how
it's-
well your plans and your studies are, because they could come back and say, I want a hydraulic of the bridge, or I want this or that before you dig. Because we ran into that earlier when we started, 5, 6 years ago, trying to clean out debris from the creek.
Right.
Where we had plans, we had everything else, and then they turned around and said, no, we want a hydraulic study of this before you touch the creek at all. So
Right.
this time we've tried to front load everything so that when it does go to the permit stage, like you said, we're there now, hopefully it should fly through, hopefully.
And now it's 2013 was the biggest one that I can remember had happened. And I've been present at council meetings vigorously for that reason, to hear what's going on.
Right.
But I had a hiatus there because of COVID. But I'm back now, and with wet feet. So it's still wet downtown, and I think it's very important. And Chief Corman's even pointed out at one point that if you can't get emergency vehicles through the town, then you got potential loss of life. So I think we need to emphasize that, applying for these permits, is that it's not something that we can no longer wait and wait and wait for people to study and improve. We did lots of study. We've built models. I think it's a time for action, and I'd like to see that done sooner than later.
I don't think we could agree with you more.
Right, I fully agree.
So everybody on the council and everybody sitting here is on board with
Yeah, there's-
ASAP.
There's nothing holding us up other than, at this point, permitting, because like you said, we're waiting on the final studies and the final reports that we have to go, which you think should be within the next month?
Not the permits.
Not the permit, but the study.
Yes, yes. It's not a study. They're working on the plans now, and the plans go to the DNR for permitting. And basically, they permit you to start. And so there's sometimes a very slow motion tennis type game where it goes back and forth and back and forth. If at some point we think we should intervene on our own behalf, then maybe we'll call some of our local representatives at the state level and ask them to help us, and sometimes they can be very helpful. But it's government, and government works slowly, and so it works, but it works slowly, and it's not how I do my own business. but it's just how it is. I mean, it's infuriating sometimes, and I understand. But I think we've kind of accelerated the process since we started buying land, and the fact that we're doing a plan now and already talking about the second phase of a plan. And I think there may be some opportunities I think we're going to talk about in the work session that will allow us not to be impeded by monies or things like that. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, or dry road at the end of the tunnel. But
Mike, hypothetically, if the permit came through tomorrow, how soon could we start on our end?
I may need an executive session to tell you. If we do it in-house, we were ready to start 2 days afterwards. I mean, we already have a conceptual plan of what we're going to do without a plan. I mean, but I'm having some personnel problems that may impede my ability to do it myself, and so we're going to talk about it. And so anyway, with some of the monies that are available now, whether we do it or somebody else does it, if somebody else does it, then we'll probably have to go through a bidding process, and so that might take another month or so, but it would be sooner than later. I mean, it would be weeks or a couple months as opposed to a couple years. I mean, I could go down there and start digging right now. I think I know what we kind of need to do, but I'm not allowed to be
And then
me.
if it backfires on us, makes it worse, then we're all in trouble, so.
Yeah, I mean, there is some risk.
Quite honestly, none of this means a lot to you other than the fact that we're moving forward and we're not holding it up. We're not trying to play games. We're just trying to get our ducks in a row so that when it goes to permit, which is where we're at now, it doesn't get kicked back and extend this thing by another year.
Would the permits are approved by someone in the county,
No, at the state level.
state level?
Yeah, it's DNR.
So people at the state level, they know about the flooding and how long that's been
At the
going on.
federal level, they even know.
Yeah,
We
it's
brought
just-
Trey Hollingsworth in here and showed him, so I mean, it's,
Okay.
It's not a question of this has been kept under wraps. It's just, as Mike said, the maddening sequence, understandably why, but it doesn't make it better when you're the one waiting for it.
Right.
Of the way the state of Indiana has structured things to get anything done close to a waterway.
Right.
And we all think it's a creek, it's not a waterway. Well, to the state of Indiana, it is most
disagree.
certainly a waterway. So, I mean, it's the same permit you would go through if you're down in Evansville and you would do something around the river. You've got to have those same permits in effect or they start finding the town and everything else. So that's kind of the quagmire that we're in.
I see. So at state and federal, okay. Then I would only ask for anybody that could do anything to accelerate it before it happens again. Because, you know, my boots are dried out now, and I'm thinking, hey, we got another year. But then someone tells me, oh, that's the 100-year flood. Well, that's language. And we're in an age of where things mean different things than what they originally supposed to mean.
Yep.
But when you tell me it's a 100-year flood and I've experienced 3 or 4 or 5 of them, I'm not that old.
Yeah, we've been told it's been the 500-year flood and the 100-year flood, and I think we're somewhere around 14 or 15,000 years at this point that we've experienced. So you're exactly right on that. And
Yes, I would like for anybody that could do anything or have any influence, because Ellettsville is getting ready to explode with growth. But a wet foundation
Right, this-
is going to
this
hamper
is-
that growth.
that's right at the dead center of the town, will limit anything we want to do. And I can tell you that as soon as it's with DNR, I mean, we got to give them some time to look over it, but we've got some arrows in our quiver that we can pull to poke them,
Okay.
which we'll do.
I thank you for everything you can do.
thanks. Anyone else? Please. Be just a second, Russ. If you'll let him go, and then we'll get back to you.
I've got one comment, Scott.
Okay, we'll get right back to you here in a moment.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Jack Harbridge, resident of Vine Street. I live at the corner of Sales and Vine Street in the old lodge. So, having been part of this was my first flood, and I had a background in some environmental law and stuff like that. So, dealing with some of those problems, I'm hearing a lot of, okay, here's what we're gonna do to get the initial flooding problem down. But as of walking a lot of these properties, as of being in the creek, and just being curious of what we can do independently, I know there's a lot of law with taking out sediment from the creek, with digging. You know, that all goes at a state and federal level. So my question is, we get the initial digging done, but if you look down at the bridge in 46, if you've got your 3 segments there, 2 of them, or 1.5, are full of sediment and aren't flowing normally anyway. This is over years of sediment being dropped from flood after flood after flood. And I agree that building up those walls, spreading it out, that's a great plan, and that'll stop some of the initial. But after each year, after each flood, even if we prevent it from spilling over, we're adding to a problem of making that now a shallower area, raising that up, and stopping up those pinch points at the bridge. So I just want to put out there now, can we start thinking about not only this initial plan, but how can we go about, whether it has to be through the loopholes of permitting or whatnot, getting plans to be able to continue the excavation of the creek through sediments that are going to continue being dropped. You know, we can fix the initial problem, but it's going to keep becoming a problem, even if it were just a solid, you know, squared off area. That sediment's going to be dropped in that area, and then that's going to become a problem as well. So I don't know is there any proactive plans we can do to where we can get an emergency permitting or access to maintain that?
Well, then it wouldn't be an emergency because we're doing it ahead of time. So I think in the long run, what you're asking, is there a preventative maintenance plan? Yes, there will be a long-term preventative maintenance plan, but it won't alleviate because of the way the state does things. As soon as you get one permit, they're not going to give you a permit that extends over 10 or 15 years. You got to go back every time you want to do it, and you can go back at a regular pace. You know, but I don't recall, there was a number at one point about how many times they'll let you enter the creek over a period of years. And I don't know what that is, but they've definitely got a number. So yes, in the long run, will there be a maintenance phase? Absolutely there will be, because otherwise all the money we spent is for naught.
Exactly.
Yeah, but to sit here and say, every 90 days we're going to be in the creek, that's really not going to happen.
I was just sitting here thinking, and it's so easy to get focused on, okay, here's our initial plan, here's what we need to accomplish. But from living in rural areas, being on a lot of creeks and stuff like that, it just immediately fills up and becomes a bigger problem. So I want to make sure
we have with this, and again, it just is what it is, for want of a better word. We're dealing with DNR, we're dealing with IDEM, you're dealing with DOT, 3 separate state agencies, any one of which can exercise one part of jurisdiction or another, because it's right in the middle of 2 highways. So that's where DOT comes in. Those aren't even town roads, those are state highways. So to even touch anything around the bridge, now you gotta go talk to NDOT. If you're gonna touch the creek, now you gotta talk to DNR. If you're gonna do something with wastewater or whatever else, now you're talking to IDEM. So all these preventative maintenance things, yeah, they'll have to happen, but they've gotta happen in a sequence, and they gotta go to the right person at the right time. Otherwise, we're still spinning our wheels.
Is there a way, when coming up with these plans and incorporating those agencies, to incorporate them into a preventative plan?
They won't give you a permit for 10, 15, 20 years. They'll give you one permit to do this. If I remember right, it has to be done in X number of period of time, and then you come back for your next permit.
Okay.
I would add that we've had a meeting with NDOT about the bridge, and they are going to work on that bridge and rehabilitate it completely in 2024, maybe 2025, I can't remember. And we've already had one pre-construction meeting, and so the waterways underneath and how they have filled up has been brought to their attention, and so we're pretty hopeful that to some extent they'll take some of that sediment out of there. But they have their ways of doing things, and there's reasons why they do and don't take that out now instead of later. And but that has been noticed and mentioned already, so.
Thank you.
2024 sounds like a long time from now, but in the world of government, it's just around the corner.
That's fair. Thank you.
Russ, you had comments?
Yes, one thing that hasn't been discussed this evening, I'm going to go back to 2008, but we can really go back earlier. Take a look at a set of aerial photos of the downtown Ellettsville area, the whole Jack's Defeat drainage area, which is a little over 5 square miles. Take a look at the increasing number of impervious surfaces, rooftops and pavement. Now, you talk about 50 and 100-year floods. 50 years from now, the amount of impervious surfaces as our fields and forests, especially west of town, still in the Jack's Defeat flood area, become warehouses and buildings and streets. We're even going to have more impervious surfaces. The problem there is that rapidly increases your rate of runoff. Water no longer can soak into the soil. A 4-inch rain in a 2-hour period, a lot of it, over half of it, will soak into the soil if you let it. However, if it's a concrete roof, a concrete road, or a parking lot, or on a bunch of roofs, it's going to run off. Now, the real issue there is your rate of flow of water. I commend you what you're doing to try to mitigate the flooding on Vine Street. But I honestly think we can slow the growth of the flooding, but if we take a longer view of it, additional development, which is coming, will continue to aggravate that area, maybe even more so than it is today. I'm concerned that I don't know that we have the ability to change our planning and zoning, but we are greatly increasing the density of structures and people in Ellettsville in the Jack's Defeat flood basin. And this has got to aggravate today and in the future the amount of flooding issues we have to deal with. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much.
I'd add a comment to that. I think with the new plans that we get, let's take Keehee for instance, they have a lot of impervious surface, a lot more that used to be there. But in fact, now that they are up and running and their stormwater retention areas are up and running and working as they were supposed to be, I'm not sure that in that instance, water is retained and the runoff downstream is less, not more. So as we build some of these subdivisions, they all have requirements for retention areas. And so I agree with what Russ is saying to a point. It only makes common sense to agree with what he says. With good engineered retention and paying attention to stormwater runoff, sometimes you can mitigate what originally was runoff and make it better even with development. So I'm not trying to be pro-development, but I'm just saying with good engineering and adequate retention, you can actually help instead of hinder problems downstream. We have retention areas, Arrowhead, which was built, I think, in '76. There was retention there, and it's fell by the wayside. It's built up with silt. It's got cattails and trees and all kinds of stuff in it. So after we do some of the work on Vine Street and get somewhat of a handle on that, then I think you're going to see us go into other areas of town and look at our old retentions and do smaller things that will help help the total problem that we have. And Vine Street's going to be a big project, and hopefully there'll be a big impact when we do it. But there are a lot of other things that we can do in the future and even go back to the past and rehabilitate some of our retention that we had in the past and help our flooding all over town, because there's other places that flood besides Vine Street. Meadowlands has a problem. And like I said, the great success, I think, because I always go out there every time, because I was in on when Keehee started being built, and when they was working on it, they was having some pretty bad runoff problems. And now that all that retention's in place, it has less runoff than it did before. It's pretty amazing. So there are fixes for some of this that you can engineer.
Both of those points, I think, Russ, you're exactly correct. Things have increased over the years. However, what's done is done. You can't go back and undo those things. But when you partner with folks, and again, picking them out, Keehee, they're very understanding, and when they build things, they have been able to engineer what they're building now to help with our problems that we inadvertently caused in the past. And Keehee was a tremendous partner in doing a lot of different things, not just along that road, but along other places. So
We'll need everybody to make this problem not be so severe.
all right, moving along now. New business. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Ellettsville, Innovation Ellettsville update, or Envision Ellettsville update. Mr. Rary.
Did you say invasion of Ellettsville? That's what it feels like sometimes.
The king of Ellettsville, Mr. Dan Rary.
I'm Dan Rary, and I'm here representing the Greater Ellettsville Area Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Ellettsville, and the Envision Ellettsville project. And I'm here tonight just to update you on our progress since my last report at our last meeting. Most activities now are in the hands of our consultant, Taylor Seifer Williams Design Group, and currently they're working on the branding and identity of the Envision Ellettsville project, their website development, and collection of base data. Those tasks should be completed and reported back to us by the end of July. And in addition, they're going to begin the demographic and socioeconomic data review and an existing physical conditions diagram later this month. We're expanding our list of stakeholders that we want to participate in the community visioning process and surveys, and our fundraising team is making great progress in reaching our goals for fundraising. And I want to especially thank you all again for your support of this project, and especially your outstanding financial support. And that's all I've got, unless anybody's got questions.
Questions for Mr. Rary? No, I think we're good. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all of the committee's doing.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to move to new business. First is the replacement of the 2011 right-hand drive meter reading vehicle.
That would be me. It's a utility vehicle we use for meter reading, and right-hand drive is important for safety. It's a 2011 vehicle that's had numerous problems, and it's time to replace it. It's on our list of vehicle replacement approved through our rates and charges with the board and the IURC. And so I just want approval to move forward. We only have one quote, and that's because it's a right-hand drive. It's a Jeep. It's the only thing made in America right now. We looked high and low to think maybe we could outsmart the fact that there are none, but we can't. And so I need approval so I can order one so I can get one next year. And that's how far out supplies are for vehicles, especially a right-hand vehicle. And so with your approval, I will move to order one, and obviously by this time next year, if we get it, we have cash in hand for this kind of replacement. But I think I need your approval to make the purchase of $43,145.98. And it's local. It's with Community Auto Group, which is Dodge and Chrysler.
So is this coming out of this year's budget or next year's then?
Well, we have a vehicle replacement list, and so we budget for these vehicles to be replaced by putting $2,500 in from sewer utility and $2,500 in from the water utility. Most of our vehicles, besides like the Vector, which would just be a wastewater purchase, they're split. And so we are putting money in every month, and so we usually keep a pretty good reserve, and we depleted it recently when we bought the Vector, but it builds pretty quick at $5,000 a month.
Darla, are you comfortable with the sole source purchase since it's a limited item?
With the explanation that, yes, it was a kind of an unusual item to try to get 3 quotes for, so.
Questions from council? Action from council.
I move approval to purchase a right side drive Jeep, is that what it was?
Correct.
From, and who was?
Community Auto Group.
From Community Auto Group.
Second.
Motion second. Sandy, please.
Donald Miller?
Yes.
Pamela Samples?
Yes.
William Ellis?
Yes.
Dan Swafford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Did we reach 300,000 on that one yet?
I'm sorry.
Did we reach 300,000 on that one yet?
What's that?
The Jeep that's currently in use?
No, it's not quite 300, but it's getting close. And I don't know if you can count it 300,000 because we've had to replace so much stuff that it's kind of,
The
but
last one
it's
was
just
pushing
not getting better.
400,000, so.
It's Frankenstein.
Next is building inspector firefighter combined position.
Also, would you like for me to start?
Yeah,
Okay,
you start.
yeah, so as always, I've been working hand in hand with planning. We've been working on this building inspection department, and we've had 2, maybe 3 temporary or regular part-time people, and we just been having some problems with getting the correct talent for the amount of work and the type of work that we're doing as building inspectors. When we do building inspections commercially, the fire department's involved as well, and I'll let Mike explain why they inspect the buildings, but we're just at a point where we're not succeeding like we'd like to. So to get the type of employee that has the skill sets, that has the ability to do digital recording and digital communications, someone that's trained and works in a regimented atmosphere. You know, they asked me to do something about the problem, and so I came up with an idea after talking to the fire chief and Kevin and Sandy, and we've decided to work within our budget and the monies that we're spending now, and we've came up with a hybrid type employee. This employee will be a firefighter, and they will train and become proficient in all types of firefighting. And foremost, they will be a firefighter, but as their duties go, primarily, or at least 50% of the time, we anticipate them being the building inspector. They also will serve as a fire department's representative for commercial inspections. I'm sure Mike and Kevin will still be involved. And then some of the problems we're having because of the amount of work we're doing in utilities, we've let our hydrant testing and fire flow information gathering to fall by the wayside. So we think this employee also will be a utilities employee and work on ISO required information for our fire flows and what have you. So, you know, we've worked out a schedule and a protocol, and I think this will serve the planning department to have that full-time employee, and for us to be, you know, to be at a pay scale that will allow somebody to take the job and embrace it and fulfill what we need. We also will have an additional firefighter, which we are always in need of. And when there's need during a firefighting event or any other kind of emergency, it gives us one more hand. Obviously, if we're in the middle of building inspection and we need another firefighter, our priorities will change. For utilities, it will keep our field operations people from peeling off of what they do, whether they're putting in services, main breaks, or maybe heavy construction down on Vine Street. It will keep them from having to be interrupted, and we'll still be able to maintain a good fire hydrant inventory. So, you want to go from there?
Yeah, we like to like to approach this from a community risk reduction situation. The Insurance Service Organization, or ISO, are the ones that give the most residential and some commercial the rates for the insurance. And having a good ISO rating is important. So having the fire inspections is important, and more importantly is the building inspections to make sure they're done correctly with the right kind of a person to do that. The other part of that is the water flow, which is a rather large part of our ISO rating, and having the fire hydrants tested on a regular basis. We are getting calls on somewhat regular basis now for the fire hydrant testing, so people can see what the flows are of our water system for future development. I mean, we're getting a lot of calls, and so it's about to happen, and I think we see that. I don't think we're not in denial, it's not happening. So the idea would be that with the history of the fire department doing fire inspections, and previously with the building department, that we would oversee this person. Building permits would still be applied for through the planning department. They would still vet their requirements as normal, and everything would start here. And through the scheduling program that they have, that they use now effectively, we would pick up on that and make sure that the inspections are being made for the new residential, well, all permits. And that's the kind of the thought process behind that. Now, we have it set up for pay. 50% would be the building department, and 25% from the fire budget, and 25% from a combined, well, no, it'd just be water, I'm sorry, from the water department. And will that be exactly every day? No, there will be days they'll do nothing but building permits. And some days, not as much, they'll work on a plan for the fire hydrant testing. An example, you can't just test necessarily one hydrant. It takes more than an hour to test one hydrant. And sometimes run into problems with those hydrants that need to be further tested. So, but we think that overall, between that and the fact that the fire department does a plan review for commercial development. Now, we asked the question, why does the fire department involved with this? We want to know what the building's going to be like after the building is built for the building department. They do it as it's being built, and the fire department has to take it from that point on. This is probably the only time we'll be in that building. And if we can get in this, and something prior Chief Jim Davis started many years ago with the county building department, having the fire department go on all commercial permit and inspections, has been wonderful for us. And now we get credit for it on our ISO rating. So having all this together as one unit, we feel would be the best served for the town. We see this growing, but right now I think what's happening with the form of economic development in the form of building in northwest Monroe County, particularly Ellettsville, this is important to have the right person right now in this position, adequately trained and with an oversight between at least the planning and the fire department to make sure that the inspections are being done correctly and that people get the minimum requirements as needed. And we think we can get this done and have a better system than what we have today.
Is it realistic that we can find someone that has all these skill sets in one person?
Can teach it.
I mean,
we have people within the fire department that would be able to fill that role at a minimum with additional education, because there's only a few of us have had the building department stuff. So, but the fire code inspection, that is a little different, but it could be. I'm not going to be untruthful. Yeah, it could be difficult, especially with the world of employment right now.
Right.
Now, everybody is suffering from the entry-level jobs to high professional jobs. So,
I guess my concern is I don't want to be a year from now say, well, now we need 3 separate positions. because 8 months ago, we had one building. When we spun off, it was a part-time person would do it. Now we need this. I'm seeing kind of department creep here.
We're having growing pains.
I
It
get
didn't
that.
creep, it's full-on run.
No, I
so-
do get that. I want us to plan for that growth as much as we can.
I don't think anybody seen COVID coming.
No,
And in the middle of COVID, but my point is, in the middle of COVID, we had a building boom. I mean, it just didn't even make sense what has happened. It has
Right.
not let up. I don't know, sooner or later, we'll probably have a dip or what have you, but we were not prepared for the growth that we are, I mean, you know, it happened at the same time we started the building project, or I should say when we took it over and did home rule. And so maybe somebody's at fault, but.
I'm not placing blame at all. I'm just trying to.
But I mean, not seeing farther into the future. But really, what I'd like to have come to you tonight and said, I need a new firefighter. I need somebody for, I need, you know, a building inspector. I mean, right now, I'm at the mind that we probably do need those employees because the planning department's overrun, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they're just, you know, like Kevin says, I'd like to be a planner sometimes, but we're busy just taking care of the day-to-day stuff. So anyway, with that said.
If that tells me a lot right there in a good sense, because the plan is eventually we can work through this. So mentally, when we're doing budgets and stuff, I would like to know that our growth is going to need this. This position's not going to work forever.
I'm kind of the reverse.
It will not. It will
I
not
hope they
work.
do come back in here and say, I need a firefighter, I need a building, and here's the plan to pay for all of
You
it.
don't understand. I do agree.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. It's just I don't want a false sense of security from people or the public and saying, well, they only needed this and now they're coming back for this. If we know right now this is a Band-Aid for a growth problem, that we want the growth. We want to be able to come back here and say we need 3 separate positions.
Well, I think one of the key points to, you know, this hybrid, if we were, and I don't think we're gonna have any giant monolithic towers.
Right.
But somebody coming from the world of the fire service has that eye toward eventual, what happens if the worst case occurs, the rescue part. So when we're building these things, let's have somebody with that eye that goes,
I love that idea.
yeah, but, as opposed to, it looks structurally stable, let's run with it. You know, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I think, you know, particularly having watched Jim Davis over the years do some things, his question was always, so if it burns, how are you getting out? Or something like that. So he brought that other side to the house that, not that we've been missing, because I think Kevin and everybody does a great job with it, but I like this hybrid starting where it's at from that perspective of safety first, and then we'll worry about everything after the fact.
To be clear, we were also, I was, you know, when we talked about this, I was thinking about our budget and trying to be frugal. And under the circumstances, if we do grow, this allows us to back out of the way we're doing it now and grow and add another person. And this is the best way to not stick our neck out and get another employee and take on, you know, the $75,000 to $85,000 commitment a year. This solves a lot of problems temporarily, but if we keep growing like we are, it will only be temporarily. It may not even be 12 months.
I'm fine with that if it's in the back of my head
Okay.
to know that.
So I think also, if my crystal ball, it will be the building department, and the building inspector would probably, and I'm kind of hoping it would be, you know, that's a good sign. And remember, we had, you know, one town marshal, we had a volunteer fire department, and we had a lot of part-time employees. And everybody has, you know, converted from some sort of smaller pay. I was the 7th fireman. We had 6. I was the 7th fireman, and they hired me so the building inspector could do his job. So that's just part of this process. I think we come back around to it, and this is not going to solve any problems for the fire department. Those problems are still going to be there. This is a problem that we have for the community in the insurance rates that are in jeopardy if we don't take care of the fire hydrant testing system. And that's what this person is going to be doing, working with that, let alone the commercial fire inspections that we get it done. I will say we do get it done. We just spend a little bit of time on it too. So, but this is important as we grow, that we establish something like this And as Scott said, we hope we can do it more, but I foresee the building inspector being, the one we would change first, because
still
I think a
have-
lot of things are going to be happening with that.
Do we still have the part-time people in position that were approved previously?
Oh, we do, and it's not clear what that position will go away.
Okay.
And so it's not clear what we're going to do with.
So some of the funding for this will probably come from that going away.
I'm sorry?
Some of the funding for this.
Yes, oh, and, the funding, basically, it turned out that the 50% of the funding will come from planning, and the monies are all there already.
Gotcha.
And with the utilities, we have the money to take care of our part, and Mike's got his part figured out from his own budget.
Great job on that.
So,
Guys.
it's unique, I know, but it just kind of seems right.
Unique times require unique solutions.
So tonight, do you need approval for this position, or are you just kind of saying that this is going to come at us in the future weeks?
We'd like approval. We really need for it to happen tonight. I'd really appreciate that you vote on it, whether you approve it or not. It's
I'll
up
make
to
a
you.
motion right now.
Well, hey,
She has 2 questions.
Go ahead.
if you do, it's kind of misworded. It's really not a firefighter. It's a building inspector, fire inspector, and water employees. That's what the position is, so.
Hey, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
And these are just kind of like hypothetical, I guess. Because I'm for it, okay? But when you bring this person in, who's going to be like the main, I say, boss? I mean, are you going to have, there's got to be like one kind of person over him. What I'm saying is, like, if he's helping Kevin, you don't, Mike ain't going to come and say, no, you need to be over
It's going to be the
here.
fire department. It's going to be the main supervisor.
You will
And,
be?
yes, and work
Okay.
with, because the planning process or the building permit process will not change with the planning. And they have an important role to play with that to begin with, so.
But he'll report to and work with the planning department every day if necessary.
Oh, sure, more than likely, yes, yeah, so.
So, Kevin, what's your thoughts on this? You haven't said anything on this. I'd like to hear your views.
Well, I like this. It gives us a little more flexibility, because right now we try to be flexible with our building inspector's schedule, but we have to be semi-rigid just so we can get things scheduled. And today he did nothing. I sent him home early. Tomorrow he scheduled half a day and he's booked solid. And it's just, it's hard for us to try to guess in advance when things are happening. Plus, the weather's all over the place. So having someone here full-time, knowing that for the most part he's going to be available anytime during the week, I think that helps us out a lot. Helps the builders out a lot too.
So you're for it then, 100%?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I really feel that I like him being based out of the fire department, because I know we need firemen. But what other certifications is this fireman going to need to be the building inspector?
For towns our size, there's a combined building inspector program through the International Code Council, which is authorized, recognized by the state of Indiana. And usually, like the state of Indiana, they offer up to 3 years to get your certifications, and that's combined with mechanical, plumbing, and residential and commercial building. You can get those individually, but those are for people who have a lot of those. So they recommend towns our size have what's called a combined. If the commercial permit is too much, then we'll have to have a talk with the planning or the town. We may have to hire an outside, a rather large, something we've never seen before and never would see again. We would probably hire somebody to do the inspections, but that we would do that through the permit process well ahead of time, so it would be covered, that's the permit, the education requirements. It's offered by the state of Indiana, in recognition of the state of Indiana through the International Code Council.
So you said it's a 3-year program?
Yes, the state offers, honors it up to 3 years, yes.
And do you know the cost? Is that expensive? Do they?
I don't think it's that expensive, no, so.
So the wages that we're going to pay, it's going to be higher than a regular fireman, correct?
No, it's going to be the base level of a firefighter, entry-level firefighter.
Okay. But we're going to require him to have this certification?
Yes,
or we're
Yes,
going
no,
to hire him to get the certification?
We're going to have him to at least get the certification within 3 years. Now, we used that as a model because the state of Indiana, the Department of Homeland Security, their inspectors, that's what they require also, within 3 years to obtain their certification, so.
So my concern then, I guess, is that are we going to find a person that has a certification already that would be willing to do this job at the
Well, we
current-
didn't the last time.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's not being, all the time for, I'm not being a smart aleck, but we really didn't in the past either. I think this is that was clearly my recommendation to both Kevin and Mike Farmer when we started talking about this, is I think through the fire agencies and Homeland Security that I have a better in to find people, if we don't have them already within my part-time staff, who might be, willing to do this job, so.
Pam, did you have questions?
Yes. Here's the second part of my question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pam. I
No,
thought
you're
you were
okay.
done.
You're okay. Okay, so let's say if you get this person, what hypothetically would you do, like if he didn't end up being really good what you expected out of fire? Because I know you expect certain things out of a fireman. Like if he's working for you, do the inspection and stuff, but he's not really up on it or can't grasp it, okay? But he's like excellent for Kevin or excellent for him, then what would you do?
Like a lot of things, we balance the talents of all of our employees, whether it's a firefighter or anybody in the town. There's always, maybe somebody, maybe not quite as good at one thing or another. We do have a backup that, between the other officers in the department that could assist with those other duties. But again, we would also offer, through the form of education to get them to where they need to be at. It's really important to do so. But we have to take the talents that are offered to us as well, so.
Because I just, wonder, hypothetically, you know how some people will go to one job and they don't quite grasp or pick up?
Yes.
But yet they might go to your place and just be excellent. So if you have one person and like Mike says, well, he's just not grasping what I need him for, what would you do in that case?
Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and as a manager, you learn those strengths and weaknesses, and you support them where you need to, and you let them fly where you don't, and you just manage the situation. That's why some people get to call themselves manager.
Yes.
That's just something, you got something new you guys come up with, like you said, a hybrid, that you're going to have a mixture of one person for three things. So it's just kind of a curious thing.
Well, they're all kind of interconnected, though. It's unique. It's unique. It's just we're in a period of growth in our town where we have to be flexible and sometimes be creative to, sometimes, I don't know if anybody's ever watched the movie Pork Chop Hill, but this was armed forces, and they had about 8 guys protecting a ridge, and they became real creative on making I don't know, it's probably the Chinese at the time, making them think they had a whole contingent of forces up there. And so sometimes running Ellettsville is kind of like Pork Chop Hill. So, we have to be creative and make a lot out of nothing. So I don't know if that's a good analogy, and I may regret saying it, but anyway.
What really interests me about this new hybrid position is making it a full-time position with benefits opens up a whole new level of talent that we were not getting for a part-time position. So, I think it's a little weird how it's going to be set up, but I think it's going to, in the long run, it's going to make all of our departments that much better.
Well, it's trial and error. You might find out this is a really, really great thing, something new you tried.
And 4 department heads come up with this, including the clerk. And so, as cooperative as we are, it has a real chance for success.
I think upon approval, then the notice would go out, maybe post 2 weeks according to the town code. If we do get anybody internally, then we would have to open up the outdoors. But there have been some preliminary interest internally, so we'll see how that bets out.
And then my question too on certification pay, because we're going to send this person to school. Are we going to pay them for the certification? Or are you going to incorporate that into the job description?
think it's going to be incorporated in the job description that they have to have within a period of time, because that is what the position is. It's not a firefighter. I mean, they can do that and maybe come from that arena, but this is the main thing is being a building inspector. Like in the fire department, we don't pay you to get your first 5 certifications. You got to have those to begin with, so, or within a certain period of time. And that would be the idea behind this also, because, you know, I think that's why we have to do it, so.
And you said you've had people, your part-times interested in
There are
this?
some people who have expressed some interest, so yes.
Well, that's great.
We can run it by some of the full-time as well, see if anybody's interested in changing positions.
I had another question, but you interrupted me.
Sorry.
Now I can't think. It's a sign of getting old, I'm telling you. I'm seriously, I can't remember what I was going to
Tell you
ask.
what, let me make a suggestion here, because we do have another meeting coming up after this. If the council doesn't mind, we have one council member off the dais right now. Let me move to privilege of the floor, and we'll return to this when we're joined by our colleague here in a moment. So is there anyone with comments under privilege of the floor, which is not a part of our regular agenda? So commenting on something that we have not already discussed or remains on the agenda for this evening. Okay, seeing none of those, move quickly to council comments. Council comments. Okay. Town manager, do you have anything further for us?
I do not.
Okay. Then we'll return back to the building inspector firefighter.
I knew what I was going to ask. Sorry.
Okay.
If you interrupt me, I'll forget again.
Say it.
So, what happens, stop it or I will forget. If we need this inspections done right now, Kevin, is your part-time person qualified, or are you qualified to sign off on this stuff, or?
Inspections?
In the intern, yeah.
I mean, our part-time inspector, yeah, I can't.
You can't or can?
Cannot.
Okay.
I can, so.
So you can?
Could,
Okay.
could, yes.
All right. Because I was just concerned, a 3-year program, then I'm thinking, well, in 3 years, we're definitely going to need those, so. And have you currently been signing off on a lot of these inspections?
On the commercial inspections within the town limits, yes.
Okay.
In the county, we get those, and it's a cursory review, but the county building department takes our word for it, and, I mean, they don't move ahead unless we say yes, you know, so.
In the interest of time, is there a motion concerning the building inspector firefighter combined position?
I'll make a motion to approve a building inspector, firefighter combined position, whatever we want to call it. How's that for broad enough?
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion a second. Sandy, please.
Scott Oldham?
Yes.
Pamela Samples?
Yes.
William Ellis?
Yes.
Dan Swafford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we've already been through privilege of the floor, supervisor comments, and council comments. Revisiting each of those again quickly. Sir.
Concerning ordinance 2021-13, the pilot agreement, I'd like to make a recommendation that the council seriously consider utilizing Baker Tilly for an analysis before we go forward with something like this.
I have questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Kind of some of my lead-in comments earlier.
Okay.
So, anyone else? Sir.
Real quickly, if you're like me, you're not up late enough now to see the lights on the trail, but the lights, the lights on the trail are done. If you get by there after dark, take a look at them. I'm sure they're very beautiful.
The thing out there is the sun. I realize it's still up when you go to bed,
yeah,
but yes.
yeah. I don't. It'll have to be September probably before I see them.
Okay.
I thought that was some kind of saying, you know, lights on the trail. I mean, it sounds like,
Yeah, I'll write a book.
Yeah, if you're old enough to see the lights on the trail.
Thank you.
Anyone else amongst those groups? Okay. Sandy, you published the meeting 15 minutes after this one or immediately adjacent to?
Immediate.
Immediate. We will take, however, with council permission, a 5-minute break after the conclusion of this meeting before we begin our work session this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Stands adjourned.